Humans were just a legend, until their warships broke the silence of Space Part 1. Whispers among the stars. The stars shone like tiny diamonds against the black void of space. Commander Lyra Vaslo stood on the observation deck of her research ship, the Stellar Seeker. She was tall, with blue-gray skin that shimmered slightly in the dim light. As a Satani, she had 4 arms and large eyes that could see spectrums of light invisible to most other species. 3 of her 4 hearts beat steadily, while the 4th pulsed with excitement. "Another day searching for ghosts," her first officer said as he joined her. Lyra turned to face Krell, a massive Meridian whose rocky skin looked like carved granite. "Not ghosts, history. There's a difference." For 15 years, Lyra had searched for proof that humans were real. In the massive Orion Confederation that joined 42 intelligent species across thousands of star systems, humans were just stories, myths, legends told to children about strange beings with only 2 arms who supposedly helped build the early alliances that eventually became the Confederation. "The Council says the expedition ends this rotation," Krell reminded her. "They're tired of funding your obsession with fairy tales." Lyra clicked her secondary fingers in irritation. The records clearly show humans existed. Something happened during the Great Silence. Something erased them, or made them disappear. The Great Silence was a 300-year-old mystery. An entire sector of space went dark for almost a decade. When contact was restored, several species were gone, including the supposed humans. Many scholars now claimed humans never existed at all, that they were symbolic beings invented for old moral lessons. "We're approaching the edge of Sector 9, announced the pilot over the ship's comm system. Lyra felt a flutter in her heart. Sector 9 was restricted, the supposed former territory of the humans before the Great Silence. The Confederation rarely granted permission to enter it. It had taken Lyra years to get approval for this expedition. "Final scans before we turn around," she ordered, knowing this might be her last chance to find proof. She joined her science team in the main lab. 6 researchers from different species worked at various stations scanning for anything unusual. They had been at this for weeks with nothing to show. "Commander, I'm picking up an energy reading," said Neri, a small avian scientist whose feathers ruffled with surprise. "It's faint but definitely artificial." Lyra rushed to her station. "Location?" "Deep in the restricted zone, about 3 light hours from here." Krell joined them, his heavy footsteps making the deck vibrate slightly. "We should report this to Central Command before investigating, and let them tell us to ignore it?" Lyra shook her head. "We'll take a closer look first. If it's significant, we'll report it." She knew she was breaking protocol, but this might be her only chance. After a brief argument, Krell reluctantly agreed. "Set course for the energy signature," Lyra ordered the pilot. "Maximum safe speed." As they traveled deeper into the restricted zone, tension grew on the ship. This area had been empty for centuries according to official reports, yet the energy reading was getting stronger. "I'm also detecting a faint signal," Neri reported. "It's using an old communication format. Very old." "Can you decode it?" Lyra asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Working on it." Hours later, they arrived at the source of the readings. At first, they saw nothing unusual, just empty space against the backdrop of distant stars. "The readings are stronger than ever," Neri said, confusion in her voice. "But there's nothing there." "Check for cloaking technology," Lyra suggested. Cloaking was rare and energy-intensive, but possible. As they ran the specialized scans, something happened. A shimmer appeared in the seemingly empty space like heat waves rising from hot ground. Then, as if a veil was being lifted, a massive object began to appear. "By the first stars," whispered Krell. A ship materialized before them. It was enormous, at least 5 times the size of their research vessel. Its design was unlike anything in the Confederation fleet. Dark gray metal formed a long, sleek hull with strange markings along the side. "Can you translate those symbols?" Lyra asked, pointing at the markings. Neri worked quickly at her station. It appears to be an identification code in an ancient language. It says, USN Vanguard. USN? Lyra's hearts raced. United Space Navy. That was supposedly a human military designation. The ship hung silently in space, making no aggressive moves. It seemed to be studying them just as they were studying it. The signal is getting clearer, Neri reported. I think I can put it through the speakers now. A moment later, a voice filled the command center. The language was unfamiliar, yet strangely recognizable to Lyra. She had studied ancient texts for years. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral John Carter of the United States Navy ship Vanguard. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The entire crew froze. The voice was calm but carried undeniable authority. It's speaking standard galactic from 3 centuries ago, Lyra said in amazement. She activated the communication system. This is Commander Lyra Vaslo of the Satani Science Guild vessel Stellar Seeker. We are on a research mission authorized by the Orion Confederation. There was a long pause before the response came. Orion Confederation? Is that what they're calling the Alliance now? Lyra exchanged shocked glances with Krell. The Alliance was the precursor to the Confederation, an organization that existed over 300 years ago. Yes, she replied carefully. The Alliance became the Confederation after the Great Silence. Another pause. Request permission to send a small delegation to your vessel for peaceful contact, the voice said. We have been away for some time and need to understand the current situation. Krell immediately shook his head. Absolutely not. We need to report this to Central Command immediately. But Lyra could hardly contain her excitement. This is it, Krell. Living proof that humans existed, still exist. This changes everything we thought we knew. Before Krell could argue further, another message came through. Commander Vaslo, we understand your caution, but you should be aware that 7 more USN vessels have just dropped their cloaking fields and now surround this sector. We mean no harm, but we will not be ignored or dismissed again. The sensor officer gasped. Commander, multiple massive ships appearing on all sides. The view screen showed the impossible. Huge warships, each dwarfing even the Vanguard, now surrounded them in a loose formation. They had appeared out of nowhere, their design strange and powerful. The legends are real, Lyra whispered. Humans were real all along. She made her decision. Admiral Carter, we would be honored to meet with your delegation, and I have many questions about where you've been all this time. As do we, Commander, came the reply. As do we. The silence of 300 years had finally been broken. Humanity had returned to the stars, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. Humans were just a legend, until their warships broke the silence of Space Part 2. First contact. Protocol Admiral John Carter stood tall on the bridge of the USN Vanguard. At 62 years old, his hair had gone completely gray, but his blue eyes remained sharp and alert. He straightened his dark blue uniform as the view screen showed the alien research vessel. 300 years, he said quietly. 300 years since Earth had contact with the rest of the galaxy. Lieutenant Samantha Wright worked at her station, monitoring communications. She was young, with short brown hair and quick hands that moved expertly across the control panel. Sir, the shuttle is ready to transport you to the alien vessel, she reported. Carter nodded. And our status? All 8 ships maintain position. Weapons are powered down, but ready. Defense systems at full capacity. The Admiral had not survived this long by being careless. The return of humanity to the galactic stage was too important to risk. After the Nexus War that had nearly destroyed Earth, humans had retreated behind a massive energy barrier, cutting themselves off from a galaxy that had turned against them. Now they were back, and Carter needed to understand what had happened in their absence. Keep all channels open. If anything seems wrong, extract us immediately, he ordered. In the shuttle bay, Carter met his team. Security Chief Frank Miller was a solid man with a serious face and watchful eyes. Dr. Grace Howard was the fleet's top xenobiologist, eager to meet new species, and Alan Peters was their best linguist and historian, Remember, Carter told them, we're representing all of humanity. First impressions matter. The shuttle departed, the Vanguard, and approached the much smaller alien ship. Through the viewport, Carter could see figures moving inside the other vessel, watching their approach. Their design has changed, noted Peters. The Satani ships used to have more curved elements. 300 years is a long time, Carter replied. I'm more concerned about what else has changed. The shuttle docked with a soft metallic clang. After pressure equalized, the door slid open to reveal 3 aliens waiting to greet them. The tallest had bluish-gray skin and 4 arms. Carter recognized the species as Satani, though their appearance had evolved somewhat from the records. Beside this alien stood a massive stone-like being and a smaller creature with colorful feathers. Welcome aboard the Stellar Seeker, the 4-armed alien said in slightly accented Standard Galactic. I am Commander Lyra Vaslo. This is my first officer, Krell, and our communications specialist, Neri. Carter stepped forward. Admiral John Carter of Earth, thank you for your welcome. Lyra's large eyes widened. You really are human. For most of the galaxy, your kind are just legends. This statement hit Carter hard. Legends. Humanity had helped found the original alliance. They had been a major power in the galaxy. How could they be reduced to mere stories? The 2 groups moved to a conference room. The aliens couldn't stop staring at the humans, studying their every move. It made Miller nervous, but Carter remained calm. Commander Vaslo, Carter began, perhaps you could explain what happened after Earth isolated itself. Our records indicate that was 300 years ago after the Nexus War. Lyra placed all 4 hands on the table. The period you refer to is called the Great Silence in our history. An entire sector of space went dark, including what we now know was human territory. When contact was restored years later, there was no sign of humans. Over time, as generations passed, many came to believe humans never existed at all. That's ridiculous, Miller said. We built half the original Alliance infrastructure. Much has been lost or changed, Lyra replied carefully. The Confederation that replaced the Alliance is dominated by species that weren't even spacefaring. During your time, Carter frowned. And what of our allies? The Meridian Collective? The Altair Republic? The Meridians are few now, Krell answered, his voice rumbling like stones grinding together. Our homeworld was attacked during the chaos that followed the silence. And the Altair Republic is now a province of the Dravari Imperium, added. Neri. Carter and Peters exchanged alarmed looks. The Dravari had been enemies of Earth during the Nexus War. The Dravari are major powers now? Carter asked. They lead the Confederation Security Council, Lyra confirmed. They were instrumental in rebuilding after the silence. Grace Howard spoke up. Commander Vaslo, you said you were on a research mission. What exactly were you researching in this restricted sector? Lyra seemed embarrassed. You. Humans. I've spent my career trying to prove that your species actually existed. Most of my colleagues think I've wasted my life chasing myths. Carter felt a chill run through him. Something was very wrong. Humanity had not just been forgotten, they had been erased. We need to see the current galactic data, he said firmly. Maps, political structures, historical records. Lyra hesitated. I should contact the Confederation Council first. We're picking up a transmission, Samantha's voice came through Carter's communicator. Multiple ships approaching this position at high speed. They're broadcasting Confederation security codes. Krell stood abruptly. You need to leave. Now. If the security forces find you here. We're not hiding, Carter said calmly. We've come to rejoin the galactic community. You don't understand, Lyra said urgently. The official history says humans were dangerous. If they're sending security forces, they're not coming to welcome you. Miller moved closer to Carter. Sir, we should return to the Vanguard. We can continue this discussion when we have better tactical positioning. Carter considered this. Very well. Commander Vaslo, we invite you to continue this conversation aboard our ship, where we can ensure everyone's safety. Lyra looked conflicted, but nodded. I'll come. Krell, take command. Tell the security forces that you were investigating an energy anomaly but found nothing. Say I'm ill and resting." "That's treason," Krell warned. "No," Lyra replied firmly. "Hiding the truth is treason. Something's wrong with our history, and I need to find out what." Minutes later, the shuttle detached from the Stellar Seeker, carrying Carter's team and Lyra back to the Vanguard. As they approached the massive human warship, Lyra stared in awe. "Our records suggested humans had modest technology," she said. "Nothing like this. We've had 300 years to advance in isolation," Carter explained. "After nearly being destroyed, we focused on defense and survival." The shuttle docked inside the Vanguard's enormous bay. When Lyra stepped onto the deck, she gasped at the sight of so many humans moving about their duties. "There are thousands of you," she whispered. "Millions," Carter corrected. "And billions more on Earth and our colonies." On the bridge, Samantha reported, "6 Confederation vessels approaching. Their weapons are active." "Maintain defensive posture," Carter ordered. "No aggressive moves." He turned to Lyra. "Now tell me everything you know about how humans were erased from history and why the Dravari now lead the Confederation we helped create." Lyra's 4 hearts beat rapidly. "I think it was no accident. Someone wanted humanity forgotten. The human ships remained in formation as the Confederation vessels approached. The silence of 300 years was broken, and the truth was about to emerge from the shadows. In the vast darkness of space, the legend of humanity was becoming reality once more. Humans were just a legend until their warships broke the silence of Spaceport 3. The gathering storm news spread quickly throughout the Orion Confederation. On hundreds of worlds, beings of all species gathered around screens and holographic displays as reports came in about the return of a supposedly mythical race called humans. On the Confederation capital world of New Centauri, the Security Council had called an emergency meeting. The enormous round chamber was filled with representatives from the leading species. At the center sat High Commander Vexanar of the Dravari Imperium. Vexanar was tall and gray-skinned with ridges along his skull and 6 fingers on each hand. His yellow eyes narrowed as he listened to the reports. "This is clearly a hoax," he announced to the assembled council. "Some unknown group is attempting to cause panic by claiming to be these legendary humans." A Meridian representative spoke up, her stone-like face showing concern. "The reports say they have 8 warships of advanced design. The scans indicate weapon systems far beyond our current technology." "Stolen or counterfeit technology," Vexnar dismissed. "There are no humans, there never were. They are myths from the primitive days of space travel." But more reports came in. Human ships had been spotted near 3 other systems. Each report described massive vessels that appeared suddenly, as if from nowhere. Vexnar left the public chamber and entered a private communication room. He entered a secure code and waited. The screen lit up to show another Dravari, older with deeper gray skin. "The impossible has happened," Vexnar said without greeting. "They've returned." "Impossible," the older Dravari replied. "The barrier was designed to be permanent. They should have destroyed themselves inside it long ago." "Well, they didn't. And now they have technology that makes ours look primitive." The elder was silent for a moment. "Activate the contingency plan. If humans have truly returned, they must be eliminated before anyone discovers the truth." On the human flagship Vanguard, Admiral Carter studied the information Lyra had provided about the current state of the galaxy. The more he learned, the more troubled he became. "They've changed everything," he said to his officers gathered in the command center. "Alliance worlds that were our allies are now under Dravari control. Historical records have been altered. Even star charts are different." Lyra stood nearby, still amazed to be surrounded by living humans. "I've been called crazy for years because I believed the old records that mentioned humans. There are few original documents left from before the Great Silence." Lieutenant Samantha Wright reported from her station. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from other human ships. The Phoenix, Defender, and Sentinel have all made contact with different worlds. The reactions are similar. Disbelief, then confusion, then alarm." Security Chief Miller frowned. "And the Confederation fleet movements?" They're mobilizing, sir. At least 30 combat vessels are moving to positions near where our ships have been spotted. Carter nodded grimly. They're preparing for conflict, just as they did 300 years ago. Lyra stepped forward. Admiral, I need to access the restricted archives on my homeworld. If someone deliberately erased humans from history, there might be evidence. Too dangerous, Miller objected. The moment you enter a Confederation system, they'll arrest you. Historian Alan Peters had been quietly reviewing the data. Now he looked up. We need to go to New Centauri. Everyone turned to him in surprise. New Centauri was Earth's first major colony, Peters explained. Before the war, it was the Alliance headquarters. If any traces of the truth remain, they would be there. Carter considered this. The Confederation capital is the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. Yes, Peters agreed. But according to these records, there's an annual celebration in 3 days, the Founding Festival. Ships from all systems will be arriving. We could blend in. Lyra's eyes widened. The Founding Festival celebrates the formation of the Confederation after the Great Silence. The irony is that it was built on the remains of your alliance. Carter made his decision. We'll send one ship, the Defender. It's our smallest vessel and can be disguised as a Meridian transport. Miller, you'll command the mission. Take Peters, Lyra, and a small team. And what will the Vanguard be doing? Miller asked. Creating a distraction. We're going to make official contact with the Meridian Collective. According to Lyra, they might be the only former allies who would remember the truth about Earth. On the Dravari command ship Dominator, High Commander Vexnar prepared his fleet. 20 warships formed a battle group, with more on the way. The intruders claim to be humans, he told his captains through a secure channel. This is impossible. Humans never existed except as a cover story for the early Alliance failures. These invaders are likely a new species attempting to destabilize the Confederation. A young officer approached hesitantly. Sir, we've analyzed the designs of the intruder ships. They match some very old records from the restricted archives. Records that were supposed to be deleted centuries ago. Vexnar's yellow eyes flashed with anger. Who accessed those archives? The last access was by a Satani researcher named Lyra Fazlo. Her ship was the first to make contact with the intruders. Find her, immediately. Meanwhile, on the human ship Defender, preparations were underway for the mission to New Centauri. The ship's outer hull was being modified to resemble a Meridian transport vessel. Security Chief Miller studied the tactical displays with his team. We'll have a narrow window. Once we're in the New Centauri system, we'll have approximately 6 hours before the celebration begins and security tightens. Peters had been working with Lyra to identify potential locations for hidden archives. The old Alliance headquarters was built into the northern mountain range. According to current maps, that area is now a Confederation historical preserve, with restricted access. Lyra nodded. The perfect place to hide something you don't want found. As the Defender prepared for its secret mission, Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, watching as his fleet moved into formation. 300 years ago, humanity had been forced to hide behind a protective barrier after the devastating Nexus War. They had used that time to advance their technology, rebuild their world, and prepare for the day they would return to the stars. That day had come, but not as Carter had expected. Something had gone terribly wrong during humanity's absence. The alliance they had helped build had been corrupted. Their contributions had been erased from history. Their very existence had become myth. Sir, Samantha said from her station, we're receiving a direct transmission from the Dravari flagship. They're demanding our immediate surrender. Carter's expression hardened. Put it on screen. The view screen activated to show High Commander Vexnar's face. For a moment, both leaders stared at each other in silence. This is High Commander Vexnar of the Orion Confederation. Identify yourselves and power down your weapons or we will open fire. Carter stepped forward. This is Admiral John Carter of Earth. We have returned to rejoin the galactic community that we helped create. We come in peace, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Vexnar's yellow eyes narrowed. Earth does not exist, humans do not exist. You are imposters and will be treated as such. The transmission ended abruptly. They're moving into attack formation, Samantha reported. Carter took a deep breath. 300 years of isolation was about to end in either reconciliation or war. He had hoped for the former but was prepared for the latter. Defensive positions, he ordered. No aggressive actions but shields at maximum. Across the darkness of space, the human and Confederation fleets faced each other. The storm that had been brewing for 3 centuries was about to break. And somewhere, in between on the disguised ship defender, a small team prepared for a mission that might reveal the truth about why humanity had been erased from galactic memory. Humans were just a legend, until their warships broke the silence of Space Part 4, Broken Silence. The disguised human ship defender entered the New Centauri system among dozens of vessels arriving for the founding festival. From the outside, it looked like a standard Meridian transport. Inside, Security Chief Frank Miller and his team prepared for their mission. Scans show heavy security around the capital city, said communications specialist Eric Ward. He was young with quick eyes that moved between multiple displays. But the northern mountains are less guarded. Lyra studied the map. The old Alliance headquarters would be here, she said, pointing to a spot marked as a historical preserve. Now called the Ancient Memorial Grounds. Historian Alan Peters nodded. Perfect cover. Who would look for secret archives in a public memorial? Miller checked his equipment. We have 6 hours. We go in, find what we can, and get out before anyone realizes we're not supposed to be there. While the Defender carried out its secret mission, Admiral Carter faced a more direct challenge. The Vanguard and 3 other human warships had entered Meridian space. Facing them were 12 Confederation vessels. They're hailing us again, Lieutenant Samantha Wright reported. The viewscreen activated to show a Meridian commander. Unlike Krell, who had rocky gray skin, this Meridian's skin was deep blue with white crystal patterns. This is Protector Zarn, of the Meridian Defense Force. Unknown vessels, state your intentions. Carter stepped forward. This is Admiral John Carter of Earth. We wish to speak with the Meridian High Council about our shared history. There was a long pause before the Meridian responded. Earth is a legend. It doesn't exist. Then what am I? Carter asked calmly. Look at me, Protector Zarn. I am human. Earth is real. And 300 years ago, the Meridian Collective and Earth were allies before the Nexus War. The Meridian's crystalline eyes widened slightly. Even if that were true, why return now? Because someone has erased us from history. Someone has changed the truth about what happened during what you call the Great Silence. We believe the Dravari are responsible. The mention of the Dravari caused visible tension in the Meridian commander. The Dravari are our allies in the Confederation. They were our enemies in the war, Carter countered. And I believe they used our absence to rewrite history. Before the Meridian could respond, new alerts sounded on the Vanguard's bridge. Multiple ships entering the system, reported the sensor officer. Dravari signatures. The viewscreen split to show High Commander Vexnar's face alongside the Meridians. Protector Zarn, stand aside, Vexnar ordered. These intruders are dangerous. Imposters who must be eliminated. Carter addressed the Meridian. If we were trying to deceive you, would we come openly? Would we seek peaceful contact? Look at what's happening. The Dravari don't want us talking to you. Ask yourself why. Protector Zarn seemed conflicted. All vessels hold position. No hostile actions from either side. He turned to Vexnar. The High Council will want to investigate these claims. There is nothing to investigate, Vexnar snapped. These are not humans. Humans never existed. On New Centauri, Miller's team had landed in a wooded area near the restricted memorial grounds. The group included Miller, Peters, Lyra, Eric Ward, and 2 security officers. They wore standard Confederation clothing to blend in. The main entrance is heavily monitored, Ward said, checking a small scanner. But there's an old maintenance tunnel that might still exist from the original structure. They moved carefully through the forest until they reached a steep rocky cliff. Peters consulted an ancient map he had recovered from Earth's archives. If the original design wasn't completely changed, there should be an emergency exit somewhere, along this ridge. Lyra used her forearms to help search the rock face. After several minutes, she called softly, "Here. The stone feels different." Peters examined the spot and pressed a specific pattern. With a soft hiss, a section of rock slid aside to reveal a dark tunnel. Alliance emergency exits were designed to remain operational for centuries, Peters explained, even without power. They entered the tunnel with light devices guiding their way. The passage sloped downward, taking them deep into the mountain. "If I'm right," Peters whispered, "this should lead to the original Alliance Council archives." When they finally reached the end of the tunnel, they found a massive sealed door with an ancient control panel. Peters worked on it while the others kept watch. "Got it," he said as the door slid open with a groan of metal that hadn't moved in centuries. They entered a vast chamber filled with dust-covered equipment and data storage units. The room was dark, except for their lights. "Can any of this still work?" Miller asked. Ward examined the systems. "Some of these are quantum storage. They could last thousands of years." While they searched for a way to access the ancient data, the situation in Meridian space grew more tense. The Dravari ships had formed an attack position despite the Meridian. "Commander's orders. They're charging weapons," Samantha reported on the Vanguard. Carter knew they were running out of time. "Protector Zarn, look at the facts. The Dravari are preparing to attack despite your orders. They don't want us talking to you." Zarn's crystalline face showed growing concern. "High Commander Vexnar, stand down your forces. This is Meridian. Space. These creatures are a threat to the entire Confederation," Vexnar responded. "We have authority to eliminate threats." Suddenly, an older Meridian appeared beside Zarn. "I wish to speak with these humans." Carter recognized the elders. "Insignia." "High Elder Crom. Your predecessor and I met many times during the formation of the original alliance." The ancient Meridian studied Carter for a long moment. "There are stories, very old stories passed down through the Council. Stories we were told never to speak of." "What stories?" Carter asked. "Of beings who helped build the first interstellar alliance. Beings who vanished during the dark times." The elder paused. "Beings called humans." Vexnar interrupted angrily. "These are children's tales. Nothing more." "Then why are you so eager to destroy them before we can hear what they have to say?" Crom asked. Back on New Centauri, Ward had managed to activate one of the ancient data systems. The screens flickered to life, showing the original Alliance emblem, a symbol that combined elements from 12 founding species, including humanity. "I'm accessing the secure archives," Ward said as his fingers moved across the old controls. "There's a record of the final days before the silence." The screen displayed a recording of an emergency council meeting. They watched as human representatives warned about a Dravari plot to use a new weapon, something called the Nexus device. "The Nexus device doesn't just destroy," said the human in the recording. "It warps space-time. If activated, it could isolate entire sectors from the rest of the galaxy." Lyra gasped. "The Great Silence, it wasn't natural, it was a weapon." Peters nodded grimly. "The Dravari didn't expect Earth to survive. When we did, they had 300 years to erase us from history." Miller checked their time. "Download everything you can. We need to get this back to the Admiral." As Ward copied the ancient files, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. "Someone's detected the power usage," Miller said. "We need to move. Now." In Meridian space, the standoff continued. The Dravari ships had fully powered weapons but hadn't fired. The Meridians remained between the two fleets. "Admiral," Samantha said urgently, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Defender." "Put it through," Carter ordered. "Eric." Ward's face appeared on a small screen. "Admiral, we found it. We have proof of what the Dravari did. They used a weapon called the Nexus device to isolate Earth. Then they spent centuries erasing us from history." Carter looked directly at Vexnar on the main view screen. "The truth is out, High Commander. Your ancestors tried to destroy us. When they failed, they tried to erase us. For the first time, uncertainty showed on Vexenar's face. These are fabrications. The Meridians kept their stories about us. Carter continued. I wonder how many other species did too. How many more will remember once they see us? The silence is broken, Vexenar, and you can't make us disappear again. Throughout the galaxy, on world after world, beings looked up at the sky as news spread. Humans were real. The legends were true, and after 3 centuries of silence, they had returned. Humans were just a legend, until their warships broke the silence of Space Part 5. Legends Reborn 1. Month after humans revealed themselves to the galaxy, the Grand Council chamber on New Centauri was filled to capacity. Representatives from every Confederation species had gathered for an historic meeting. Admiral John Carter stood at the center of the chamber. His gray hair and blue uniform stood out among the diverse beings that surrounded him. Beside him stood Lyra Vaslo, the Satani, researcher whose belief in humans had started everything. For 3 centuries, humanity isolated itself behind a protective barrier. Carter began. His voice was calm but carried throughout the vast room. We believed the galaxy had rejected us. We thought our allies had turned against us. We were wrong. The evidence recovered by Miller's team had been verified by multiple species. The ancient records clearly showed that the Dravari had used the Nexus device to cut off Earth and several neighboring systems from the rest of the galaxy. Then they had systematically erased humanity from historical records, claiming that humans were merely legends. The Dravari feared human potential, Carter continued. They feared our rapid advancement and our alliances with other species. So, they tried to remove us from existence. High Commander Vexenar was noticeably absent. After the truth was revealed, he and several other high-ranking Dravari had fled to the outer regions of the galaxy. The Dravari people, many of whom had never known the truth, were represented by a new, younger leader named Moxera. We did not know, Moxera said, her voice filled with shame. For generations we believed what we were taught, that humans were myths, that the Nexus War was caused by other species. Carter nodded. Many were deceived. But now the truth is known. The T. Meridian High Elder Crumb spoke next. The stories of humans were kept alive in our oldest records, forbidden knowledge that only the highest elders could access. We should have done more to preserve the truth. Throughout the chamber, other species shared similar stories. The Altari had cave paintings showing humans helping them develop their first spaceships. The Satani had old songs about the 2-armed builders who reached for the stars. Even the avian Neri had ancient nests decorated with symbols that matched human writing. Humans hadn't been completely forgotten. They had become legends, whispered about but never openly acknowledged under Dravari influence. What happens now? Asked the newly elected Confederation Chancellor, a tall, blue-skinned being named Jylor. Carter looked around the chamber. Earth wishes to rejoin the galactic community, not to conquer or control, but to rebuild the alliance that was meant to exist, an alliance of equals, just as we planned 300 years ago. Security Chief Frank Miller stood at attention near the chamber entrance. He watched the proceedings with a cautious eye. The mission to recover the ancient records had nearly ended in disaster. His team had been pursued through the old Alliance headquarters by Confederation security forces. They had barely escaped with the evidence, but that was in the past now. The truth had spread too widely to be contained. Throughout the galaxy, people learned that the mysterious ships appearing in their systems were not invaders, but the return of a founding species long erased from public memory. We have spent 3 centuries advancing in isolation, Carter explained, to the Council. Our technology developed along different paths than yours. We offer to share what we have learned, and to learn from you in return. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some species were eager to establish new relationships with humans. Others remained cautious. Generations of stories about dangerous mythical humans, not easily forgotten. Lyra stepped forward to speak. Her forearms moved in the formal gestures of Satani speech. I spent my life searching for proof that humans existed. I was ridiculed and dismissed, yet I kept searching because the fragments of truth I found didn't match the official history. Now we know why. She turned to face the council. If we could be deceived about something as fundamental as the existence of an entire species, what other lies might we have been told? What other truths might be waiting to be rediscovered? Her words caused a thoughtful silence to fall over the chamber. After much discussion, the council voted. Earth would be recognized as a sovereign power and invited to join a new, reformed confederation. The old alliance records would be restored to the public archives. The true history would be taught again. As the meeting ended, Carter stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of New Centauri. The city had been built on the foundations of an old Earth colony. Now it was the center of galactic government, though one that had been shaped by centuries of subtle Dravari influence. Miller joined him on the balcony. "Do you think it will work, sir? This new alliance?" Carter watched the alien sun setting over the distant mountains. "It has to work, Miller. We've all been manipulated for too long. Humans were erased from history, and other species were stripped of their true past as well. The Dravari leaders who fled won't give up easily," Miller warned. "They'll try to undermine everything we're building." "Let them try," Carter replied. "We survived 3 centuries of isolation. We survived being turned into myths. We'll survive whatever comes next." On the other side of the balcony, Lyra was showing historian Alan Peters a small device. "It's a children's toy from my world," she explained. "It tells the story of the star builders who helped the ancient Satani reach new worlds." Peters smiled as he watched the holographic images of simplified human figures working alongside 4-armed Satani. "They couldn't erase us completely. Legends have power." Throughout the galaxy, human ships emerged from hiding, not as conquerors, but as returners, reclaiming their place in a community they had helped create centuries ago. On dozens of worlds, beings looked up at the night sky with new understanding. The stars had always held secrets. Now one of the greatest secrets had been revealed. Humanity was no longer just a legend. They were real, and they had returned. The last evening of the historic council session, Admiral Carter stood with Lyra and watched a new monument being unveiled in the central plaza of New Centauri. It showed figures from 12 species, including humans, standing together in a circle. It was a recreation of the original Alliance emblem, restored after centuries of alteration. "What will you do now?" Carter asked Lyra. The Satani researcher looked up at the stars appearing in the evening sky. "Continue searching for truth. There are still many mysteries in our shared history. And many new chapters to write," Carter added. Across the galaxy, the silence was broken. The legend had become reality. And the future, once constrained by lies, now open to new possibilities as humanity rejoined the galactic community they had helped create so long ago.